Are you ready to unlock your potential? Ready to leverage your life experience? Primed for reinvention? Welcome to Keys to Change with Shelly Henderson, your roadmap to a fulfilling second act in the world of real estate.
My guest today is Erin Finnen, the Senior Loan Officer at American Security Mortgage Corporation. Erin's you rock attitude and love for the real estate and mortgage industries, along with her 12-year plus experience, has made her a trusted advisor to her clients and the driving force behind her brand, Lending by Design. At LBD, as we like to say, the team takes pride in providing hands-on, white glove service for every client, combining tailored service with low rates and fees to offer the most unique quality mortgage experience in the industry. I can speak from experience. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shelly. It's great to be here. And you nailed it on that intro.
Woo! I'm telling you, I only have what you've done. So you've nailed it. And it's been a pleasure to see your growth and just watch it flow. You and I met, if I'm correct, 2018, I think. And we were connected together with a women's business group, and we totally hit it off and have so many things in common, in particular, not only our love for our children, but our love for real estate.
That's right. That's right. Yes, we as a team, we definitely connected immediately, I feel like, from the get-go, and just knew just by looking at each other that we were going to be friends for life. So
I know, and I love it. And you and I both, I was thinking about this the other day. You and I both are trying to bring sexy back to the real estate industry because, like on social media, all these people are just, selling these great things. And what we have is, you got to make it our own because real estate and mortgages, sometimes people are a little bit afraid of both.
right. And I, started in real estate as a real estate agent and then went over to the mortgage side. And I do feel like the real estate side is just naturally more sexy. Mortgages,
Mhm.
people's eyes glaze over.
Yes.
Which is why I named my team Lending by Design and Team LBD, because I wanted to make mortgages fun and fashionable. I like I like fashion a lot more than I like mortgages.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's why we wear little black dresses. So that's where the LBD comes in to all of our events and closings, and we just try to make ourselves stand out amongst the sea of loan officers.
And you nailed it totally because you've got that niche and your brand, and you are bringing sexy back to the mortgage world and the real estate world, and I love that. And that's what I'm trying to do with Keys to Change is to show people, in particular women, that let's not be afraid of the real estate world, and you too can have something of your own and build generational wealth or leave a legacy with real estate and how it's it's just a wonderful thing. But I want to also ask you, let's start backwards a little bit. You were in the real estate business, and why did you get into the real estate business to begin with? Let's start there so everybody knows.
Well, after I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, go Tar Heels, moved back to Charlotte, and I was actually marketing director for the Uptown YMCA, which was a nonprofit organization. Loved that job, made tons of connections. It really was well suited for what I studied in college, and enjoyed it, but realized it was not going to support my lifestyle.
Right.
Um, so I went and got my real estate license, and I'd always had an interest in that. And so, passed my real estate exam, and shortly thereafter, my husband at the time found out that we were being moved to San Francisco. So I decided I was going to get my real estate license in San Francisco, which was quite the feat. I mean, starting a career in a place like that that's so dependent on your circle of influence and knowing the city in which you're showing the homes in. But I was, really determined to be successful in California. I wasn't going to give up on my dream just because we moved across the country. Um,
That's key.
and
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that I answered an ad on Craigslist. That was before I think there were like murders and stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Um,
That's
and
when it was good. It was a good.
Yeah, it was for a relocation company, and this was back during the dot-com bubble, and a lot of New York investment bankers were moving to, the Bay Area, and so I was hired by this firm, and I went in very honestly and said, "I don't know anything about San Francisco. I've just gotten my real estate license. I don't have a circle of influence." And they're like, "We're gonna stop you right there. We're hiring you because of your Southern accent." Like, well, that's a first. But they were like, "We're going to trust you because, these bankers coming from New York, they think everyone in San Francisco is weird, and they're just going to think you're normal and trustworthy and listen to what you say." Um, so that's kind of how I fell into it. And it was an amazing career there. I did a lot and mostly high-end rentals, but they would come in for 2 or 3 days and they would have to decide on a place, and it was just the greatest job. I loved it so much.
How long were you there?
We were there 4 years, and then the bubble burst, so we got moved back to Charlotte, and, I decided to go work for a local real estate firm here, um, realizing it was gonna be a lot harder to make the same amount of money here because the difference in the markets, but, shortly thereafter, I found out that I was expecting, which was really, really exciting. And I'm the type of person that if I can't be number one and put 100% in what I'm doing, I'm not going to do it. So I decided to stay home for 5 years with my children and be a stay-at-home mom. So
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I know, and I can attest to that because you are one of the hardest working women that I know, and I love that. And you said something that resonated with me because I think most people would have just cast their dream away when they got relocated. And so many times people are just full of excuses. And I talk a lot about that on this podcast because you and I have not gotten where we are today by giving excuses or letting things or circumstances get into the way. So, ho how did you, you're not only moving to a different city, but you moved to a different state. So, what was your key moment where you were like, "I'm just gonna do this and make it happen?"
I
What was
really
your
didn't
motivation?
I didn't have anything to lose, and I really didn't have any other options. So, where there's fear and pain, it'll push you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. So, I just decided I didn't have any other job opportunities, so why not try something new, even though it was in a totally different state, in a totally different market. So,
Awesome. What did you like about San Francisco compared to Charlotte?
the scenery.
Yeah.
I can remember just landing there and being in the cab on our way to the hotel that we had to live in for several weeks before we found a place to stay. Um, and riding up this hill and looking down and just seeing the Golden Gate Bridge and being like, I mean, the scene it's unreal. You just can't even believe what you're looking at. And back then the city was just thriving because of the dot-com situation. There was excitement in the air, and
Yeah.
it was just I felt like I was really living there. Does that make sense? Like, I really
Yes.
felt like I was making the most out of my life there,
Yes.
whether it be learning to snowboard and Lake Tahoe being so near and just walking around, sitting in the cafes and people watching. I mean, everything about it I loved so much. And Charlotte was way different back in 1997.
Yes, it was.
It's
Yes.
thriving today, but it was a lot different back then. So,
Yeah, it sure
yeah.
was. It sure was. My family has been here since the mid to late 70s and just seen so much growth. But our kids have too, right? They're about the same ages. And just since um our kids were born in the late 90s. Wow, the past 15, 20 years, 25 years have just blown up.
Right.
Well,
And I'm happy to be a part of that blow up, right?
yes, I
And
know, I know. So many when people complain about traffic and this and that, we also have to remember that with growth comes, um, possibilities and prosperity. So,
lots of
you know,
opportunity in the real
yeah,
estate.
lots of opportunities. So there's that. And, real estate is fabulous everywhere because everybody needs a place to live, whether you rent or own. And we believe in that. And so do you. And therefore, we need the tools to be successful in the real estate market. And I think what I've noticed on my end is a lot of people are choosing not to buy or sell because they're either afraid of what might happen with the economy or they don't have the tools. And again, there's that, don't let your circumstances get in the way for your
Right.
goal or your potential success because what you think might happen might not. And um I believe that there's always a, buying real estate, there's always a good time to do it. It might not be the best time, but is there ever a bad time? No, because people say, well, my kids are never going to be able to buy a house. You and I had that conversation. My 29-year-old son has now purchased his second home and
In a
used your,
very difficult real estate market to do so.
yes,
Yes.
and he just closed a few months ago. So, we can attest to that and your services and how flawless it was. And like I told you, I didn't even know that he contacted you. It was so great. He was like, "Oh, I'm calling Erin." And where there's a will, there's a way. And I'll be honest with you, he doesn't make six figures. And what people think is the common misconception that you have to make a lot of money to afford something. And what do you say about that? Let's start with that.
Well, first of all, your son is a rock star and he is resourceful and very good at figuring things out. And loved working with him. So you should be very proud. But I do think, people say my child's not going to be able to buy a house. Well, might not be able to buy a house in the neighborhood that they want to be in or end up in. But I do think that there is a ton of opportunity out there for first time home buyers. They just need to be connected with the right real estate agent. They need to be
Yes.
connected with the right mortgage lender, someone that's going to educate them. I'm doing several first time home buyer little cocktail parties, and it's not necessarily for people that are ready to buy. It's the 22 and 23-year-olds that I'm trying to educate. How do you get ready to buy your first house? What do
Yes.
you need to do as far as credit goes? And
Yeah.
how much do you need to have saved as a down payment? And what do you need to look at as a normal monthly payment that you're going to feel comfortable with? And, go backwards to what does that mean as far as purchase price goes? So I think getting these people right out of school and educating them on what the steps they need to take from an early age in order to be able to realize that goal of homeownership is something that a lot of people aren't doing or just kind of saying the market's terrible, they're never going to be able to buy. Well, you and I are not like that. Like
Right.
the challenge, we're going to figure it out.
Exactly. And it's such a beautiful thing. Like I would move tomorrow. I mean, I have found every house that we've lived in as a married couple, and um, I I just feel like real estate is where it's at, and you and I are passionate about it, and I do think that there is an education piece because when you wanna buy a house, that's not the time. I mean, you can, but the time to do all that is to plan prior, because then when you're ready and you just wanna do it. And then I think people get frustrated because it's like, "Well, I'm ready to buy a house, but I don't have any money." Well, okay, we should have thought about that a couple of years ago.
Right. Well,
And so
I think the
training is
unknown for people,
mhm.
educating them takes the anxiety out of it.
Yes.
And I just don't think there is a lot of people out there telling people what they need to know about purchasing real estate. One of my sayings is it's just real estate. Like,
Yeah.
it's real
Yeah.
estate. Let's not make it a bigger deal than it is. It's just real estate.
Right.
It can be bought and sold.
Exactly.
But, people think that they have to put 20% down. That is not the case. I mean, you can get in for 0 down, and they think when they buy their second home, if they're holding on to their first house, they would never be able to qualify for a second house. That's not the case. We have ways around that. So I think just, again, teaching people what they need to know and being out there, um, putting knowledge on people on the steps they need to take is key. And I just think, again, a lot of people just kind of throw their hands up in the air and are like, "Oh, this is an obstacle. They're not gonna be able to do it." And we both know that if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, right, right. And I had this question asked to me for a pitch in the media world, and they said, "Can you have um, wealth without buying real estate? And what about the person that doesn't want to be, locked in to a mortgage for 20 years?" And I'm going to ask you if my response was correct. So I said, yes, certainly you can have wealth and retirement if you don't own real estate. But the first answer to my pitch was, we typically see in the real estate world your investment increasing by about 10% here in the Charlotte market, per year. So as a rental investment, it's great. As a homeowner, it's great for that steady increase of profitability when you go to sell. The second piece that I answered was, if you're the type of person that maybe you don't ever plan to get married and you don't want the hassle, you don't want, or it's later in life and you don't want to deal with the yard or the upkeep, buy something, live in it for a couple of years, and then either flip it or rent it out. Is that a good option?
I think that's a great option.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned in the Charlotte area, if they're increasing over 10%, even if it's 5 or 6%, that's a better return on most
Yeah.
investments.
Yes. And that's on
And
average, over the years. So I'm
And
just,
and it's also pride of ownership. It's also putting a roof over your head and something that you can, um, take pride in fixing up or making it your own.
right.
And then I do think so many people are scared of the second step that you said of holding on to that or flipping it, the investment piece of it.
Yeah.
I think Henderson Properties, does a great job at educating people on real estate investing. Again, there's that education piece again. Um, but I do understand some people just don't want to have responsibility of owning a
Right.
property. But that type of person probably is not really worried about their return on an investment on most things.
That's right. That's very you got a good point. That's a good point.
But no, I
And that's
just agree.
true. Like, that's true. Yeah. Maybe they're afraid of commitment. I
Right.
don't know.
There's a lot of commitment phobes out there. I can
Yeah.
be kind of a commitment phobe sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, okay, so after somebody is educated, then they're like, "Okay, Erin, I'm 25 years old. I I wanna own my first home by the time I'm 30." Let's just say that. What would they need to do next?
Well, it depends on where they are in their situation. I mean, what we're looking for is you need to at least have, 3% down is probably the norm, between 3 and 5% down for a first time home buyer. There are 100%, options available that I mentioned. However, I don't think those are the best options available to build wealth because it's
Okay.
actually a second mortgage that you carry. So that eats into your equity. So I would say having at least 3 to 5% to put down is a good starting point. Having a couple months reserves left in the bank after you have that down payment amount. And then having a good idea of what your actual budget is. monthly. I can look at your income versus what your debts are and tell you where you should be comfortable. But I'm not looking at your bank accounts and saying, oh, well, you're spending this much on food and this much on entertainment and this much on travel. So, you really have to kind of figure out what is your comfort level. And we usually start with, what are you paying in rent? Are you able to make that rent payment and still put money in the bank? Then that's
Right.
comfortable for you. Are you scraping by paycheck to paycheck? Then you're probably not ready yet. Or maybe that rent payment is too high, which we run into a lot because rent, as we know, rents in the Charlotte area are extremely high. And a lot of times you can get into a house for a lower monthly payment, even with the rates being as high as they are now, which, by the way, they're historically still low. I have to remind people of that on a daily basis. Um, so, it's all about what they feel comfortable with, monthly payment wise is the big one when it comes to the first time home buyer.
Well, and the average uh, rental rate right now in the Charlotte area average is about $1,500, $1,600. Do you feel that that is a mortgage that could could get a very nice, livable house for somebody?
Well, that's
What do you
kinda
think?
low right now. I mean,
Okay.
the rates have just gone up to the upper 6s, low 7s.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you, I just priced, one this morning that was a $400,000 purchase. It did have HOA dues, but that payment was closer to 2,200, 2,400. Um,
Okay.
that running. So I do think that 13 to 1,500 would be attainable if you had a bigger down payment.
Okay.
Um, but I don't think that's the norm right now. When we were back in the 4s and 5s, absolutely. But,
Yes.
with them being in the upper 6s, lower 7s, um, that's not necessarily attainable right now.
Okay, something to consider. But
Right.
if you had a roommate, that would be very doable, right?
Roommate. Mhm.
Purchase something if you can't afford that and then have the roommate to split
Right.
the payment.
Right. And I do see that a lot.
You
So
do. Eh,
I'm also seeing gifts from family members. We talked about
okay.
this last night.
Yeah.
Parents
Yeah.
are very generous these days. So,
Yes, they
gift
are.
that gift from parents can get you down to that payment that's comfortable for
Yes,
sure. And that's totally allowed and acceptable
it
form
is.
form payment. So
Yes, it is. Um, yeah, I know. Blake reminded me of that. "Yeah, it sure would be nice if I had a little extra help." I said, "Well, not today."
right. Well, my parents didn't give me any money for my down payment. So
Nope. Nope.
still
Not
waiting for
today.
that.
Not today.
Love you, mom and dad.
That's gonna be another podcast. Well, okay, so there's that. So, people all of a sudden have the dollar figure, and what do you do or what do you say to the person who really wants to have that first home or second home or investment property or whatever the case may be, and they're just like, "Oh, Erin, I can't afford that mortgage, but, this is" they have it in their head, "This is the house I want. This is the dream house." H how do they go for that long-term goal, if you will? I mean, is it doable? Is the American dream doable to, everybody to afford a house if they want it? And what do you think about that?
I do think it's doable. I think you might have to compromise on some things. But I love creative financing. I love working with my people and trying to figure out how can we make that payment as low as possible. If we're divided into a first and a second mortgage, to have the second mortgage be a, interest only type payment. But if I have an application from somebody, I'm pretty good at figuring it out, for them. Again, there may be some things they have to compromise, but I rarely get an application from somebody and deny them. I mean, that it that I don't think I've had a denial this year, actually. Um, So that tells me what the percentage of applications I'm getting and most people are able to purchase, that's pretty good odds. So,
That's great.
yeah. I mean, I
That's very encouraging.
I've been doing this a long time, obviously, but, you know, there's always some type of product or, way to make something work. And, they may have to wait a year. We may have to work on their credit or, work on how much they have in the bank or, maybe they're their hourly position. And I say, I recommend you go find a salary position because that's going to be so much better for underwriting.
Because
Just
it's consistent, right,
right,
the salary,
right.
yep.
Just
I know
looking at the profile and figuring it out, but it usually can be figured out. So
I had somebody tell me one time, "Well, my credit is like Swiss cheese." And I said, "But you can fix that, it's just gonna take some time, but, you you can fix that. You have the opportunity, and, that's the thing. That's the other key that I think that people need for success is you are in charge of your own self. What there's a lot of things that we are not in control of, but we are in control of, what we say, what we think, what we eat, and what we purchase. So, you know, it's amazing when we try to, have um control over our spending. And it's just like, when you keep a food journal, if you keep a journal of what you're spending, it's very eye-opening. It's re
you also have control over paying your bills on time.
Yes.
I
Yes,
mean,
there's that.
so if you're gonna spend it, you need to at least pay the minimum payment and pay it on time, please.
Yeah.
Um, but that is something I do run into, and that's probably one of the reasons why I don't have to deny people is because I am a self-taught credit expert, and I do, run credit expert on all of my clients if their credit score is below a 780. So 780 is considered
Okay.
perfect credit in the mortgage world.
Oh,
Um,
okay, good to
if
know. I thought it was over 800.
well, it used to be 740 actually till about 8 months ago. And when I
Okay.
say perfect credit, meaning you're not getting any rate adjustment based on your credit score. So if someone comes to me and they have a below a 780 score, I'm always going to look at that and try to figure out things that we can do, tasks that we can do to get their credit score up. And most of the time it's a quick rescore. It's there's usually pretty easy tasks that you can do to get your score up that people are very unaware of. That's the whole education piece again. Especially first time home buyers that have thin credit. And that
Yes.
means they just don't have a lot of credit open or haven't had a long history of credit. There's a lot of things that we can do, like open up another card, spend $10 on it, and wait 30 days. That'll bump their score up
Yes.
20 points. So there's simple things people can do that they're not aware of to improve their credit score. And that makes a big difference on interest rate, mortgage insurance, and what they can afford. I mean, it can be a difference between, if a 780 score or a 700 score could be a difference on how much that they can afford monthly based on,
Right.
you know, because the interest rate's going to be higher with the lower score.
I know, things are so different now. Like, remember, back in our day, like, you really didn't have a credit card and you paid everything off and cash was king, back in the day. And now it's just it's really different. And my younger son Grant, he has a goal in a year or plus to buy his first house. And he was saying the same thing. He actually told me last night, we were talking about um you coming on my podcast, and he goes, "Well, I just applied for a second credit card because you're supposed to do this, this, and this." And he goes, "My credit rating is 790." And
Yay!
wow, that's really good. Okay, don't blow it, you know. And yeah, it was really I was encouraged by what he was saying and kind of educating me a little bit about, yeah, here's the process. You're supposed to do this. And the second credit card, you don't really put anything on there, just a little bit. And then it just shows that you're paying something on time or early. Early is key too.
Early good too. Yeah.
Mhm. So this is so great because sometimes, when you say mortgage lender or people start talking about the money, they get all like, oh my gosh, I don't want anybody to know my business. But we have to have these tools to have success and to change what we're doing because if you're continuously buying coffee for yourself or going out to dinner or going out on the weekends, you're you're not going to be able to probably afford and make your long-term goal. But when they sit down with somebody like you and have the expertise that lending by design can give, they automatically might have this plan. I mean, a football team doesn't go to the Super Bowl just on a wing and a prayer. There's a lot there's there's a lot of planning and being purposeful and strategizing and getting to that end goal. So what is that end goal? And I know you have 2 daughters. What have you tried to instill in them along the way to make that happen if they so choose to do that, buy a house?
Well, from day one, I wanted to instill in my children, this goes back a little bit, independence and resourcefulness. And I think if you teach them independence from an early age and resourcefulness, self-soothing is another thing, uh, that can take them a long way in life. I honestly think both my kids could probably originate a loan because they've heard it their entire life. They know all the mortgage jargon. And, you know, it's great because they already have that knowledge. I mean, they already have that knowledge of what they need to do just from what they grew up hearing. Um,
Yes.
so, you know, my oldest is in New York City. She won't be buying there anytime soon.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
I can Libby's at Alabama, Roll
Woo,
Tide.
roll tide.
The best. Love Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
Um, I could see her being one of those like your son who comes, straight out of college and is ready to invest in real estate.
Right. And on that note, we often say it's okay not to buy a house. You don't have to have that pressure to do it immediately. Or for an example, like your daughter who's in New York City, probably not the best area for her to buy anything right now at the age of 23, 22. But, you know, look at the experience that she's gaining from renting and from living in a big city. And she can decide, does she want to live there or does she prefer a smaller town? Or, you know, it's all about what you like and your priorities at that season in life. And her priority right now as a young adult is maybe trying to save for potentially to buy a house, but she knows it's probably not gonna happen for her in New York City at her age.
Right. That's
Yeah,
right. And
and
she's
that's realistic. Yeah,
well, her apartment is I call it the mouse house. She has 2 roommates, but she's in the middle of Soho, so she's, location, location, location. My kids know that too. Um, she is right in the middle of everything, and she was willing to compromise size for location. So she already gets that concept, and that's what I mean by compromising things. When you wanna buy your first house, you gotta figure out what your priorities are. If it's
yeah,
location, you wanna be in the middle of everything, then it's probably gonna be a condo or something, smaller
right.
than you want to have, at some point. But, and I do think that there is an opportunity for you to buy. You just have to figure out your list and what you're gonna settle for.
Yeah, and your non-negotiables or what you're willing to sacrifice. I think that's something else in the training piece that people need to understand. And also, there are people that never have a desire to purchase a home, and that's fine too. You know, people have the choice whether they want to do that or not. You and I would tell them absolutely invest in real estate because we feel like that's where it's at.
Fastest way to gain wealth. And
Yes,
and
fastest.
when I'm, analyzing people's file and what mortgage we're going to put them in, that's really what I'm looking at. I'm not just trying to find them a quick fix to get them into a house. I want it to be something that they can get into a house, but also allows them to realize that equity gain sooner
Right,
sooner rather than later.
right.
Because we do, you want to. That's the whole reason. Besides having a roof over your head, is to
Yeah.
gain wealth. So,
Yes, and what we have found with our personal real estate portfolio is properties that we bought years ago that were deemed, less than desirable and maybe not in the popular place of the city are now.
in the popular place.
Yeah, yeah, and we joke sometimes that we can't afford to buy it back because it's, it's the price has just gone up. So, people shouldn't be afraid of that. They shouldn't buy the best house in the neighborhood
Right.
because,
Buy
you
the
know
ugliest house on the best street.
Mhm. Yes, yes. And but I think we've reached a point in our culture that people want instant gratification and they have to get past that. You know, it's not where it's at. If you're looking for instant gratification, you're probably you might not get the best rate of return on your purchase. And speaking of training, you've had to work very diligently and very hard to form the team that you have. And tell me at LBD, you have this great team and you're adding to that team. What did you do to see that vision that you needed to expand? And how do you see your team playing this mortgage rate game out for the future?
Um, that has several parts. Okay, so I'll start by, um, I'll go back a little bit. I was a stay-at-home mom, and when my daughter was 10 months old, or my youngest was 10 months old, I realized I wanted to go back to work. And instead of going back to real estate, I went to the mortgage side. I went and worked. Well, I went to the mortgage side because the owner of the mortgage company who approached me said, "You should go into mortgages. You're going to have banking hours," which was a complete lie. I work when real estate
I
agents
know.
work,
I was like,
which is
really?
around the clock. But I fell
Huh.
for it, and here we are. But I went back onto the mortgage side, and I was working for a broker at the time, and I really didn't have any formal training. I mean, it was 100% commission. They just kind of threw me out there. I had to figure everything out for myself. And blood, sweat, and tears. I grew my business even during 2008 and 2009. Survived that and got to a point in my business that I couldn't grow anymore with it just being me. And I just was like, I got to figure out my support staff or someone to help me because I can't get any further in my career. You can only work so many. There's only so many hours in a day, and
Right.
I'm trying to be
Exactly.
a single mom at the same time. So um, I ended up hiring an assistant and then got the idea that I wanted to hire several assistants and take them from the back end to also being loan officers. And at that time, the mortgage world was very much a man's world. There were not a lot of women loan officers. And so I actually hired my first loan officer assistant that I was going to train to be loan officer from Georgia, Christina, who still works with me today. And she started out as my loan officer assistant. She did that. I helped her get licensed, taught her everything that she needed to know on the back end. And
And
then
how many years ago was that?
we just celebrated our 11th year together.
Wow. Congratulations.
So now she's a top producing loan officer. She's, still on my team, but I've taken 5 other people and done the same thing with them. And it has just been so rewarding, not just to build myself up in my own business, but seeing these women. When Christina came to me, and she doesn't mind me saying this, she didn't even know what a mortgage was. I mean, she had just
Right.
graduated from Georgia. She knew nothing. In fact, I asked her in her interview what her dream job was, and she said a dog walker. And I was like, okay, well, wrangling dogs is a little bit like wrangling mortgages. We'll connect that in your hires.
I love it.
Um, but it's been great to teach women about the mortgage world and watch them be successful. Since then, I have hired some men, so don't worry. My nephew actually works for me, and he's
Good.
amazing. And we have our own. We have assistants. We have several processors. My processor, who I would say probably has helped me be the most successful, was actually one of my best friend's sorority sisters' roommates at Chapel Hill. So you can see that we go way back. We finish each other's sentences. She is my right hand, and she's the most loyal human being that I know. I could get like a little emotional about it. Actually, she's so
Oh,
amazing.
uh,
But so most of my team has been with me along the years. Kind of once you become an LPD or you stay an LPDer, and it's like one big family. So I feel very blessed and honored to work with them day in and day out.
I love that. And do you know, I was doing some research for um, some social media work that I was working on. And did you know that women up until 1974 could not get a mortgage on their own? So just in my lifetime, they've been able to get a mortgage on their own, and it's just such a wonderful thing. Um, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. That's actually eye opening.
I know. If you think about it, like, wow, we've come a long way. And you and I feel so passionately, and I really hope we can work together on this about bringing more women into real estate, whether it's as a realtor, mortgage officer, if it's as a real estate investor. We just really have a passion for that. So I look forward to see, where that takes us. And um, you are so awesome. You have so many keys to change people and change their minds and change their ways so that they too can be successful in the real estate world. And before we go, I'm going to ask you a question. If you didn't do what you did, I think I know the answer. What is your dream job? What would you do?
I would definitely be in fashion.
I know, I knew it.
I'm living vicariously through my daughter at the moment in the fashion world. No, I would definitely do something in fashion, and stay tuned. I may still do something in fashion at some point. So
Okay. Okay. I look forward to that. I'll be your assistant when that happens.
the CEO.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. I'm a
I'll
good worker bee.
type better for you.
Okay. Thank you. CEO of Fashion and Fun.
That's
Where
right.
can everybody find you, Erin? What's a quick way to get a hold of you?
At Lending by Design on Instagram. And we are at lendingbydesign.com as well, or americassecuritymortgage.com.
Okay. Sounds great. Sounds awesome. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it as always. You are truly so special to me, and I just love your success. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I could seriously sit here and talk to you all day.
Yes, we could. We have a lot to talk about. So it'll be part 2 soon.
I would love that.
Bye.
This has been Keys to Change with Shelly Henderson. Remember, it's never too late to unlock your real estate potential. To discover more inspiring stories and invaluable resources, visit us at ShellyLHenderson.com. Your journey to a thriving real estate investment starts here.